and join the rest of his body in deciding to wait at Buphead's until Dad got home. Byron was fast. Mama was faster. He didn't even make it out of the living room before Mama tackled him. Mama sure was a good athlete. She sat on his chest and said, "Not this time, Buster. This time you pay." She said, "Bush, tush." Byron squirmed around for a second and then did something I'd only seen him do a couple times before. He started crying. Mama lit a match and grabbed Byron by the wrist and said, "Put your finger out." I couldn't believe it. By's finger popped right out. He was hypnotized all over again. Mama's horrible snake-like voice came out again and said, "If you ever. The match got closer and closer to Byron's skinny brown finger. "Play with. No. If you ever even look at." Byron's hand was shaking, and he was crying like a big baby, but his fingers still stayed out. Another match in this house? The match was getting closer and closer. I knew Brian could feel the heat. I would personally, by myself. It was so close now that I thought I could hear the sweat on Byron's finger getting turned into steam and going psss. I will burn not just one finger. I will burn your entire hand, then send you to a juvenile home. Byron closed his eyes and screamed. Right when the fire was going to give him a good roasting, Joetta ran across the room, sounding like that little engine that I thought it could. She blew the match out before it got him. She thought she missed, though, 'cause she stood there huffing and puffing and huffing at the match even after it went out. Mama's hand, Byron's finger, and the match were soaked with Joey's slob. "Honey, we agree, don't we?" "Yes, Mommy," Joey said, "but I thought you got him." "Not yet, sweetheart, but I'm going to." 4 more times Mama lit a match, and 4 more times Joey pchooched it out. Finally, Mama got sick of having slob all over her hand and gave up. That night, Byron had to deal with Dad. No picnic, but a lot better ending than his Nazi parachutes movie. The Captain Brian Watson gets captured and burned alive by the evil snake woman with his own flamethrower of death. Chapter 6. Swedish Creams and Welfare Cheese. Mama stuck her head into the living room and said, "Byron, I want you and Kenny to go up to Mitchell's and get some milk, a loaf of bread, and a can of tomato paste for dinner." She waved a little piece of paper at us that had the grocery store list written on it. "How come Kenny can't go by himself?" "Byron, I want a half a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and a small can of tomato paste." If you asked Mama why you had to do something, and she didn't feel like explaining, she just repeated herself. She was chopping up onions for spaghetti sauce, and I guess the tears made it so that she didn't feel like talking. If you were stupid enough to ask your question again, there would be the loudest quiet in the world coming from Mama. If you went totally crazy and asked the third question the third time, you might as well tie yourself to a tree and say, "Ready, aim, fire." Byron got the message and jerked up off the couch and walked over to the TV and punched the off knob. I knew this wasn't going to be a fun walk up to Mitchell's. We went into the kitchen. "Give me the money." "Just sign for it." "Just what?" "Just tell Mr. Mitchell you want to sign for it." Mama kept whacking the onions. "What, you just go in there and tell Mr. Mitchell I want to sign for some food?" "Your daddy and me made all the arrangements last weekend, Byron. Mr. Mr. Mitchell will let us sign for groceries until payday. Lots of people do it. A half a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, a small can of tomato paste. Mama started chopping the onions a little harder. So I ain't going to give him no cash? Whack, whack, whack. All of a sudden, Byron's face jumped like a bell. Went off in his head. Wait a minute. I know what this means. We're on welfare, ain't we? I held my breath. If I found out we were on welfare, I was really going to have to get ready to be teased. No, we're not on welfare. I can't believe it. You really gonna start serving welfare food in this house? You really gonna make me go embarrass myself by signing a welfare list for some groceries? I guess Bi hadn't been counting how many times Mama had repeated herself. She smacked the knife on the kitchen counter and jumped right up in Bi's face. Listen here, Mr. High and Mighty. Since you just got to know, food is food. You've eaten welfare food in the house before, and if you need be, you'll eat it again. Don't come playing that nonsense with me. I already told you this is not welfare food. You've got about 5 seconds to get out, hit that door. Kenny, move. Bi pouted and walked real fast up to Mitchell, so I had to kind of run along to keep up with him. He didn't say anything while we got the stuff Mama wanted. He just snatched the things off the shelves. Then he dropped a bomb on me. You go, get in line, and hold our spot. I'm going to look at some comics for a minute. When you get up to the register, I'll come and tell him how we're going to pay. Oh, man. I knew what that meant. Bide figured out a way not to get embarrassed. He was going to hide until after I signed for the groceries. I was going to be the one who got embarrassed. I couldn't argue or anything, so now it was up to me, who was pouting. Byron disappeared around the comic book rack. Hi, Kenny. Hi, Mr. Mitchell. This all you want? Uh-huh. He took the groceries and rang them up in the cash register. That's $1.23. I saw Bi's head peeking out from around the comics. This has got to go on a welfare list, I kind of said quietly. Mr. Mitchell twisted his face. On the what? I said, real low so only Mr. Mitchell could hear. We just found out we got to put on welfare. We got put on welfare, and we got to sign for this food up on a welfare list. Brian's head disappeared again. Mr. Mitchell laughed. Kenny, this isn't a welfare list. This just means your daddy's going to pay all at once instead of a few times every week. Really? Mr. Mitchell reached under the counter and opened up a little brown box. He pulled out a bunch of yellow cards, and I could see one said Watson was written on the top of them. He wrote $1.23 on the first line and said, sign here. Then he pointed to the spot next to the $1.23. I wrote, Kenny Watson, and gave him back the pen. That's it. He put the groceries in a brown paper bag and handed them to me. See you, Mr. Mitchell. The second I walked out of the store, Byron was next to me, and he was in a lot better mood. Man, I can't believe it. We just had a chance to get a bag full of free food, and all we took was some stupid milk, a loaf of bread, and a can of tomato sauce. Brian's good mood started getting to me, too. He was smiling, even put his arms around my shoulders as we walked. I couldn't help myself. It felt so grown up to have Bi walking with me like that. I started laughing right along with him. His mood was so much better that he even took the bag of groceries from me. Most of the time when Mama made us go to Mitchell's, Byron would make me carry the bags from the store right to the front porch. Then he'd take them from me so Mama would think he'd carried them all the way. But now he started carrying them 4 blocks away from home. This is just too much. All you got to do is sign that stupid card, and that old fool Mitchell will give you what you want. Too much. Now that Bi was happy, I had 2 questions I wanted to ask him. First, He had said a word that I'd never heard before, and since he had said it in front of Mama, I knew it wasn't cussing. As I walked along with him to home, his arm around my shoulder, I thought I might get a real answer from him. Byron, what's a peon? A peon? Didn't you see the Magnificent Seven? Peons was them folks that was so poor that the rich folks would just as soon pee on them as anything else. I knew this had to be a lie. If you could get yourself in a lot of trouble if you listened to half the stuff Byron said. But I asked my next question anyway. What do you think the welfare food was that Mama said she gave us? I wish I hadn't asked, 'cause this brought back his bad mood. He took his arm from around my shoulder and said, I knew what it was. He handed me back the groceries, too. Don't you remember how some of the time Dad sneaks up in the morning and goes to the kitchen, and when he's out there's a big jug of milk? Ain't you ever wondered where that milk came from? You ever seen any udders on Dad? That milk come out of one of them brown bag boxes they keep on the high shelves. Pure D welfare food. And don't you remember that cheese? Who ever heard of cheese coming in a box as big as a loaf of bread? You ever try to pick up one of them things? Real cheese comes in hunks or slices. Not all blanged loaf that weighs 40 pounds. I always thought there was something strange about that mess, and now I know. She had been sneaking us welfare food. Pure D welfare food. The cheese tasted okay to me, and, except for a big powdery lump every once in a while, Dad's milk was all right too. But to try to get Byron back in his good mood, I acted real disgusted and said, "Oh, man." A week later, I was walking in the alley behind Mitchell's when a big cookie with pink frosting just about hit me in the head. It went by like a little flying saucer, then crashed in the dirt. I looked all around and didn't see anybody, so I put my hands over my face and stood still, because I knew if something weird like this happened once, it usually happened again. Sure enough, another cookie hit me right in the back, and a big laugh came out of the green apple tree. Byron. He dropped out of the tree like a superhero. He had a great big bag of cookies in one hand and a green apple with a giant bite out of it in the other. Want some? By tipped the bag of Swedish cream cookies at me. I knew this was a trick. The bag must have been empty, but I looked inside anyway. There was still a half a bag of cookies. Thanks. I grabbed 2 of the cookies and looked at them real good in case Bi had put bugs or something in them. They were clean, but I still kept waiting for the trick. Why would Byron waste 4 cookies, good cookies, on me? Man, Swedish creams have got to be the best cookies in the world. I gulped them down and wiped my hands on my pants. I couldn't believe it. Bi tipped the bag at me again. He jumped up and snatched a green apple off the tree, checked it for wormholes, and then handed it to me. You best eat some of this. Them Swedish creams is good at first, but they kind of get stuck in your throat after a while. Byron was being too nice, so I knew something bad was about to happen. Then I noticed a crumpled up Swedish cream bag on the ground next to the tree, and I figured out why he's being so generous. He had already eaten a bag and a half. A bell went off in my head. I knew now why he had been so excited and happy when he found out about getting free food at Mitchell's. Bi was signing up for stuff that Mama and Dad didn't even know about. It was like he read my mind, 'cause I was just about to say, "Oh, Bi," when he stopped being friendly, crossed his eyes at me, and said, "Don't even think about it, Poindexter. You ate 2 of them yourself, so quit wasting my cookies and just shut up and enjoy what's left." He tipped the bag at me again. He had me. I couldn't tell on him, or else I'd be in just as much trouble as he would.
More in part 3. Subscribe to Potato Face.